I'm here with PieterdeVries, who is a professor who, among other things, is an expert in emerging technologies and in the way that they're used. And I'm really pleased to have Pieter here with me today. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Love to talk about your work and what you've been working on, particularly regarding emerging technologies and some of your thoughts. So can you tell me a little bit about what you've been, what's been on your mind lately?
Yes, what we've been doing lately, because there was a question about how do we use these new technologies? How can we really profit from it from a educational point of view? I'm, working in a technical university, and of course they know how to deal with virtual reality and things like that. But the discussion mostly is about what kind of a camera to use. And what I wanted to discuss is how can we use these technologies to improve education? So what do you need to be able to do that? Is there research available telling you that if you use virtual reality, you can achieve better results faster? But that's not the case. And also what we found, and that's clear, that especially in the technical engineering education, the point is that they study all different things. So there's no one solution that could be applied. And you could say, okay, this is, the way to go. And therefore, we also thought we have to talk with the teachers, but not only with the teachers, also with the people who support the teachers. We also have to talk about, what the policy is of the university. So we set up a research looking at these different things, not just looking at the technology, but looking at, what is needed to decide about what technology to use for what and what do you want to achieve. So what we did actually, we did some desk research. We went to visit some other universities in Europe. We also talked to a couple of businesses who were known for using these technologies and try to make up our mind. It was an interesting thing that, for example, the one company said, this, for example, virtual reality allows us to make repairs at a distance. So we sell something, a printing machine, very big printing machine. We support, the maintenance of the machine, but we are talking here about the buyers from Latin America. And there you have the engineers. And in the early days, the engineers, they would come to the Netherlands and, get a course, but things are changing rapidly. So the machine is different, etc. So we are using virtual reality because we can take a look at the machine from a distance and work together with these engineers. So for them, it had a clear business value, very much directly. They weren't using it to improve their education or training, but much more to support the business. One other issue that's rather big in Europe is we're missing out on engineers. The numbers are not quite clear, but they're talking about 200, 300, 400,000 engineers we really need. And not just general engineers, but engineers who are capable of doing particular things with particular skills. And so we had the idea that this might be a connection, because what we've seen in universities, sometimes they have a course virtual reality. But by the time the course is there and the course is finished, virtual reality has changed completely. Other cameras, other programs and things like that. So it means that you as a university, if you try to stay in line with what's happening in the industry and really give your students also, the skills that are in demand, then you have to find a solution for that. I mean, this gap has been there for ages, I know. Between university and the demand of the businesses. But here we might have an opportunity if you start using virtual reality at a university on a educational level, then students will get to know the technology, how to use it, not a particular application, but in general get a good idea of what it is, which would lower the threshold for them in a company to cope with questions dealing with virtual reality. In the end, what did we find out? In general, teachers are very eager to improve education, like always. But especially with the new technologies, they're most of the time too complicated to get to know them, like for virtual reality, it is complicated. Then you have the financial part, because it will cost a little bit more money, you have to plan, etc., etc. Things change rapidly. Sometimes also cameras are not being used anymore after a year. So there are, it is quite complicated to really move forward, and you as a teacher try to figure out if this could work for you or not. Our conclusion was, if you really want to deal with these emerging technologies, you have to work together.
In terms of the relationship between universities and businesses, what are your thoughts on how they could best work together in terms of getting technology in the right position to help people work better and more efficiently and really more pleasantly?
I gave you the example of thinking about the jobs, the skills requirements of the businesses. The experience we have is that most of the time for the businesses, it's also difficult to indicate what kind of skills they need, because you're talking about not tomorrow, but in a year or 2 years. So that's difficult. So I think closer working together, and that happens increasingly, closely working together, but also on a very practical level. So that's something we try to stimulate, is that students work, they have an internship, that's one of the issues, but really work on particular issues using the technology of the company, but also use the technology, bring it back to the university if that's possible, and further develop the idea of how can we use this to improve education, to make it more attractive for students, to make it also something that relatively easy can be dealt with by the teachers, by the institution. And what we would like also is a better exchange between universities and businesses.
Let's go back to something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned sort of the disconnect that sometimes comes up between academia and the business world. And one of the goals of the ICLW conference is to bring academics and business together into one venue, and it's always a challenge. You mentioned that academic papers tend to not be read by people in the business world all that often, for many reasons, and certainly one of which is people just don't have the time either, as well as not seeing the practicality. Are there suggestions we could come up with for how to make some of the academic research more accessible, more palatable? Should people, it's a different world. Should people be filming a short video of their findings and, put it in a format? Are there things that you might suggest as someone who's worked in both worlds that you feel would really, help that collaboration, help further that?
Yes. Well, one of the ideas we have is that students can play an important role in this. So you could say, okay, let's try to develop a paper together. You're doing this project. You're also working in the company, and we also, talk with the company about the paper. What do they want to see? What do they need to know to do this better? And it's about a problem they have. So it gets very close, and that's a way of, helping the student, helping the business, and helping the professor also, because he can, collect these kind of papers and use them as, practical examples of what is happening in the business. And I think this collaboration could be done. And I know, like you already told, they don't have the time. Well, with Zoom, they might have, they're used to it. And I think if they start using these kind of tools, it will be easier. It will, it will bring them together more easily. And that would be a good thing to do.
Can we talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and where it fits in, and where we see AI coming into education? It's certainly been my own background in a lot of ways, but we're at a very different point now in terms of both people's expectations and maybe what's out there and what should be out there. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on AI and education.
Yes, yes. I think it's a very complicated technology. It's really, it's not easy to do things with it, which basically means that you always have to try to find partners who are really skilled to do something in that field. So that makes it more difficult. I think we should really look at artificial intelligence in how this could help. Not so much, predict things. Can we, for example, analyze the behavior of a student and then predict how the student will develop his career on the basis of all these data? This is what is called, the dataism, in the sense that, if we have the data, then we can make sure that, the student will not be a problem in the end, but he will be, successful. I think that's a too easy way. People are much more complicated than that. In university, what you can see is students who do a wonderful job the first year, the second year, and the third year you don't see them anymore. And there you have students who hardly make it and they flourish, and in the third year, wonderful. So we have to be very, very careful, I think, with the use of artificial intelligence. And this is something I would really recommend to discuss this, talk about it, look at the applications and see, is this really what we're looking for? It should be helpful. Artificial intelligence should serve us, not the other way around.
Yeah, no, there's a huge opportunity here, and it's an opportunity, I think, for lots of thinking and creativity, and for looking at what we really can do, and yes, certainly moving away from just the model of tracking and the sort of view that that's what we're going to get out of this is knowing all about you, as opposed to doing something to help people and help society, and it's a mindset change as well as everything else, I think.
Yes. And I surely hope that, the COVID or the pandemic, things will change rapidly because of all kinds of reasons. I see programs saying, okay, you can subscribe in a course and we will help you to plan for the future. I'm very reluctant in that sense, that because we do not really know how the future will look like, but we need to think about it. That's completely right. So, and hopefully the pandemic will, in the end, because there's a lot of sorrow going on, but in the end it will help us to, to create a better society for education, for students, for everybody. And maybe we are capable of, helping to make decisions that are for the good of education.
Yeah, I hope so as well, and I think so, and I do share your cautious optimism, and I think that may be a good note to wrap up on. There is, it's been a tremendously difficult time, and there is at least some optimism that some good things can come out of it for the long term, but for education, for society as a whole. So Pieter, I want to thank you so much for your time, for talking with me today. Work you're doing is tremendously interesting, both applying to the university world and to the business world, and it's been great talking with you.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a pleasure, David.